You think you have time. That is the most expensive lie you will ever believe. Not because death is coming, everyone already knows that, but because you have quietly decided it is not coming soon. And that single silent assumption is currently costing you your entire life, one wasted afternoon at a time. There was a man in Rome who saw through this lie 2,000 years ago with a clarity that should genuinely frighten you. His name was Seneca. He was wealthy, respected, an advisor to an emperor, a man who had access to everything Rome could offer: power, luxury, status. And yet he spent his final years writing letters warning ordinary people about the exact trap you are standing in right now. He wrote it plainly: it is not that we have a short life to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Read that again. Not a short life, a wasted one. This is not a man complaining from poverty or failure. Seneca had everything society tells you to chase, and from inside that very success, he looked back and realized something most people only realize on their deathbed when it is far too late to act on it. Let's talk about where he learned this. Narrative. Seneca was exiled once, sent away from Rome for 8 years, stripped of his position, separated from his family, living in uncertainty on an island with no guarantee he would ever return to the life he knew.
Most men would have spent those 8 years in bitterness, counting the days, mourning the time being stolen from them. Seneca did something different. He treated the exile as a laboratory. If time was truly his most valuable possession, then even exile, even loss, could not touch the one thing that actually belonged to him: how he chose to spend the hours he still had. He read, he wrote, he studied his own reactions the way a scientist studies data. And when he was finally recalled to Rome, he did not return as a broken man. He returned sharper than the version of himself that left. That is the first brutal truth hiding inside his letters. Circumstances are not what waste your life. You are. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because this next part is about you specifically, not ancient Rome. Seneca noticed something almost universal about how people spend their days. They guard their money like it is sacred. They lock it away. They budget it obsessively. They would never let a stranger walk up and take cash out of their hands. But time they hand out to absolutely anyone who asks for it, constantly, without a second thought. A phone call you didn't need to take. A conversation with someone who drains you for an hour and gives nothing back. A meeting that could have been a message. A scroll through a screen that eats an entire evening you will never, under any circumstance, get back. Not tomorrow, not next year, never. You would never let a stranger walk into your house and empty your bank account, but you let strangers walk into your day, every single day, and take your hours without resistance. And you don't even notice, because no alarm goes off when time disappears the way one goes off when money does. Here is the question Seneca would ask you directly if he were sitting across from you right now. If you had to pay real cash for every hour you spent today, would you have spent it exactly the same way? Be honest. Most people cannot answer that question without flinching. Seneca had a specific name for the kind of person who lives like this. He called them the busy. Not because they accomplish much, most of them don't, but because busyness has become the most socially acceptable way to avoid ever looking directly at their own life. Busyness is not productivity. Busyness is anesthesia. It lets you feel like you are moving, achieving, contributing, while quietly avoiding the terrifying question underneath all of it. Am I actually building the life I claim to want, or am I just staying exhausted enough that I never have to ask? The tragedy, Seneca argued, is not that these people eventually die. Everyone dies. The tragedy is that most of them were already dead for years before their actual death happened. Dead to their own ambitions. Dead to the version of themselves they kept postponing until things settled down. Things never settled down. That was always a story you told yourself so you could stay comfortable a little longer, so you could avoid the harder, scarier version of your own life just one more week, one more month, one more year, until suddenly it is 30 years later, and you are the man Seneca warned about, the one who had time and spent almost none of it on purpose. There is a practice Seneca lived by that almost nobody does today, and it costs nothing to start. Every single night before sleeping, he asked himself one question: if this had been my last day, would I be ashamed of how I spent it? Not morbid, clarifying, because the moment you genuinely accept that your time is finite and already running out while you read this sentence, something shifts. The argument you are about to start over something trivial stops mattering. The opinion of someone who has never built anything real stops mattering. The comfort you've been quietly hiding behind stops feeling safe and starts feeling like exactly what it is: theft. Theft from the only life you are ever going to get.
This is the core of what he meant when he said people don't actually need more time. They need to stop wasting the time they already have. More time would not fix a man who cannot use the time in front of him. It would only give him more hours to waste the exact same way. Seneca gave a practical test for this, and it still works today exactly as it did in Rome. Take out a piece of paper, actual paper, not your phone, and write down your current age. Then write down the average lifespan for someone like you. Now do the subtraction. Look at the number that remains. That number is not abstract anymore. That is the actual quantity of years you have left to become who you claim you want to become. Now divide that further. How many summers does that number represent? How many more times will you see the people you love most if you're honest about how often you actually see them? The number gets smaller every time you do this exercise properly. Seneca did this deliberately, not to depress himself, but because vague time feels infinite, and specific time demands action. Most people avoid this exercise their entire lives because it makes procrastination impossible to justify afterward. Once you have seen the real number, someday stops being an acceptable answer to anything. There is also a second habit hiding underneath all of this that Seneca attacked directly: the habit of living for other people's schedules instead of your own. He noticed how much of a Roman's day was spent performing duties for other people's approval, attending things out of obligation, managing other people's opinions of him, while his own actual priorities sat untouched at the bottom of the list, day after day, year after year. He said a man who orders his life around what others expect of him has, in every meaningful sense, already given his life away while still breathing. You do not need to abandon your responsibilities to reclaim this. You need to notice how much of your calendar exists only because you were afraid to say no, and start subtracting from that pile before you subtract from anything else. Seneca wrote something else that most people conveniently ignore because it indicts the very habit that is stealing their life away: the habit of waiting. Waiting for the promotion before you start really living. Waiting for the relationship to feel right before you commit fully. Waiting for the conditions to be perfect before you start the business, write the book, have the hard conversation, become the man you actually respect. Seneca called this putting off living. He said most people don't fail to live, they postpone it, piece by piece, decade by decade, until the postponement becomes the entire life. And the cruelest part is that nobody plans to do this. Nobody wakes up and decides, I will waste my life. It happens in small, forgivable seeming increments. One delayed decision at a time, one more scroll, one more excuse, until the sum of all those small delays is a life that was never actually lived, only postponed indefinitely, and then ended. And here is where his story becomes almost unbearable to sit with. Years after writing these letters, the emperor he had once advised, Nero, turned on him. Accused without real proof of conspiracy, Seneca was ordered to take his own life. And by every account of how he met that moment, he did not panic. He did not beg. He gathered those closest to him, spoke calmly about the principles he had spent his life writing about, and faced the end the same way he had told others to face every single day, as something already accounted for, already made peace with, because he had spent decades treating each day as though it might be his last. The man who told you to stop wasting time did not waste his own ending either. That is not a coincidence. That is the entire philosophy completed. So here, directly, is what Seneca would say to you if he were writing this letter for you specifically, right now, today. You are not too young to start. You are not too busy to change. You are not owed tomorrow simply because you were given one yesterday. The version of you that keeps waiting for the right moment is walking directly into the same trap the busy fall into. There is no right moment coming. There is only this one, spent well or spent carelessly, and then gone.
So do the actual exercise. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself Seneca's question honestly, not for a comment section, not for anyone watching, for your own reckoning with your own hours. If today had been the last day you were given, would you be ashamed of how you spent it? Now go live like you already know the answer.